Of course, it's not good for the dollar. It's better for gold and Bitcoin. China
Yeah.
has actively accumulating gold for the past 10 years after the great
Hmm.
financial crisis in 2008 and after Russia-Ukraine conflict in 2022. China has only been accumulating more gold during this crisis. And now Xi Jinping, the leader of China, is asking other countries in BRICS region to accumulate gold as well and store the gold in Shanghai because they want to play a role like the US in 1940s when the Bretton Woods
Mm.
has initiated. The US government has collected gold from these overseas central banks and stored them in the New York Feds. And then they printed dollar, the almost infinite amount of the dollar, and spread it around the world. And China is trying to do the same. And President Trump just cannot overwatch this. So he has to stop. He has to stop the
Hmm.
China playing the same role as the US in the world. There cannot be two suns in the sky at the same time. And I think Trump is
Right.
doing a really good job in terms of beating its competitor, the US's competitor down. I'm not
Hmm.
saying China is an evil and US is a good force. It's just the conflict between the two, the strongest nations in the world, and Trump is doing good job dealing with his enemy. I also believe he's doing a good job taking this Chinese wealthy people's money out of their nation to the US using the Bitcoin
Mm.
network. What I mean by that is, as Trump increases the tariff applied to the Chinese companies exporting goods to the US, they have to find a leeway to export their goods, or they have to find a way to store their wealth and exit the Chinese market. As you know, Chinese stock market has been tanking for the past 5 years. Their real estate price has also been tanking for the same period. Just like Korea, China's wealth is heavily stored in the real estate market. But I don't really think real
Hmm.
estate will ever come back up in China because there's just too much supply and very little demand. So
Mm.
the rich people there is just finding this way to get their wealth out of China. But it's getting more difficult and difficult because the Communist Party just won't let them do it. And Bitcoin has been
Mm.
doing a really good job for them. So Trump knows this. I think President Trump knows this, and he heavily tariffs these Chinese companies and let them put their assets more into Bitcoin and use Bitcoin to exit their own country, which is China. And he wants the fund of the Chinese wealthy people to come into the US eventually. It has been going to Singapore and Dubai and Switzerland, these free nations, but Trump wants them to put their wealth in the US right now. So that's why he called the US as the crypto capital in the next century. I think we're
Hmm.
seeing the initial stage of that transition, and it's really interesting to watch what's going to happen in the future.
It is, and you make an interesting point. I wasn't fully aware that the Chinese government doesn't want the wealth coming out of their country, although that makes a lot of sense. So it kind of brings up, the point where when major economies start fighting trade wars like this, is it fair to say that that makes Bitcoin look even more attractive as a neutral global money that no country can control? Because if they're able to move their wealth out of the country using Bitcoin, that would seem like a real boon to the Bitcoin industry, especially for people in China, right?
You're 100% right. Whenever these things happen, the economic players, exporters, entrepreneurs, they are not just waiting for the government to do something for them, but they are actively looking for their exit strategy. So the rumor is in Vietnam, if you go to Vietnam and Thailand, these other Southeast Asian countries right now, there are tons of Chinese entrepreneurs coming into those countries and looking for these factories that they can purchase. Why? Because they cannot export directly to the US because of the heavy tariff. That's why they are going to Vietnam to look for this new factory that they can purchase and produce their goods there and export from Vietnam. They are also coming to South Korea too, because they at least want to change their tax into from China to Korea. So they can avoid they can lower down the tax level. They are looking for the ways, right? Actively looking for the ways. Bitcoin is also their exit strategy. Their wealth has been stored in the real estate market, Chinese local real estate market for the past couple decades. Now, recently, they've found a way to purchase real estate in other countries. That's why in Canada, the majority of the expensive resorts in the sea coast are all purchased by Chinese people. And the same thing is happening in South Korea and Japan. The real estate price is going up because there are so many Chinese people and wealthy people in China coming in and purchasing real estates, not in their names, but in a different person's name, I guess, or in a group's name. And they're just looking for more ways to do the same thing. That's why they're interested in Bitcoin. Bitcoin, it's not anonymous, but it's more like a pseudonymous, right? So it can cover your
Right.
name once your asset is in the Bitcoin network. So that's why they are interested in it. And you can transfer assets whenever you want, freely, anytime. And that's what makes Chinese people who want to get their best route out of their country when something big happens. For example, like war breaks out between China and Taiwan, then they can, of course, move whatever they have at the moment to whenever they want to move to, right? So Bitcoin is, of course, the best safe haven asset for them. And more Chinese people are just interested in Bitcoin nowadays.
So, what is that like? I mean, as someone who's worked in the Asian financial scene for some time, Brian, are you seeing that people in places like Korea, Japan, and or China are actually seeing Bitcoin as this protection for their wealth when there is political tension like this? Or are people truly, in your experience, starting to flock to Bitcoin in that way?
Yes, yes, of course. Korea and Japan are a little bit different situation right now. The Japanese economy is rather booming up these days. After the new prime minister came into the office, Takaichi Sanae, the first female prime minister of Japan, Japanese people are more expecting their economy to boom up for the next few years. And that's because their economy has been in the same level without any inflation for the last 30 years. And they're now just coming back up on the track. So they're expecting for the good future. But in Korea, we are a little bit opposite to that, where we have been a booming economy for the last 30 years, but now we are getting into the stage where Japan has suffered 30 years ago. So we are more looking for a safe haven asset than Japanese people, I guess. And I think China is also going to the same route. Their economy, of course, is getting back up, but the majority of the Chinese people, the wealth gap of the top rich and the normal people is really big in China. And I'm talking about the majority people under 1% or 2%. And they are just, there's nothing they can expect from the government in the next 5 or 10 years. Like I said, real estate and stock market was everything for them. And gold is drying up in the market, and they just cannot find a way to preserve their wealth and stay wealthy for a long term. So they're more likely looking for alternative assets, and Korea is in the same situation too. That's why Bitcoin is getting more popular in these two countries. In Japan, I don't really think Bitcoin will is a phenomenon right now. Um, Nikkei, the stock market index in Japan. it's going to
Yeah.
the next level right now, right? It's over 40.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's in the another level right now. So Asian countries are generally doing poorly against the US in terms of the stock market
Hmm.
and capital market, etc. But Japan is following the US lead. Korea and
Hmm.
China are falling behind, and people living in these two countries are will get more interested in Bitcoin, of course.